It's Monday, November 26, 2018, and I would like to call the Charles City Community School District Board of Education meeting to order with roll call vote, please.
Maycumber.
Here.
Walker absent. Dyke.
Here.
Freund.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Tilton.
Here.
Reading of the district mission, vision statement, and core values by Director Mack.
Our mission is to engage, inspire, and empower students and staff in order to maximize learning. Our district core values are best for all kids, family, committed leaders, passionate, and invitational.
Agenda item number 3, approval of agenda. Is there any revisions, changes, additions?
There's none.
All right. Ask for a motion.
Move to approve the agenda as published.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome visitors and open the floor to public comment. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, comments by board members and superintendent.
So going with our board and superintendent goals, under board goal and superintendent goal 1 of professional learning, wanted to compliment all of the board for going to the Iowa Association of School Board Convention. I lose track of time, a week before last, Thanksgiving, and spending 2 days. I really feel like high quality learning, and I know we have an action or a discussion item where we'll talk about that and share that out more. But I talked to many of my colleagues where they had none of the board there, maybe 1 or 2 members. So it's not a given that all the board shows up. So the fact that all 5 took time out of your busy lives in a very full-time volunteer position to come down and support that. So I also want to congratulate the board on earning the Team Achievement Award for the Iowa Association of School Boards Better Boardsmanship. All 5 of our board members earned this through a lot of hard work by earning points and credits through professional learning. And being the new guy, I really get to sit back and really appreciate this, because I watched you guys do this over the summer. It's a lot of hard work, and we can share more about that. But very few boards, gosh, I want to say, was it less than 5?
3%.
Yeah, it was 3%. You know, very few boards earned, all members earned this distinction, so that's really cool. Also want to also talk about board goal 2 of culture and climate, and really working hard with our paraeducators. We've identified that as a group where we want to really work on culture and climate morale. We've actually convened a focus group where we're working with some of the leadership with the paraeducators, working on a strategy to improve culture and climate. Look for us to have an actual action plan that we want to execute in second semester to really do some things where I think we can honor and help support our paraeducators. And we set our goal simple. We want to be the model for paraeducators in the state of Iowa. We want people actually be saying, hey, that's how we should do things. And we've got some growth areas to go, but that's not going to be a major focus area for us. Also want to really congratulate a team of students and teachers that have been working on having tour guides available at our buildings. Right now, if you want to take a tour of our schools, it's possible. We've been giving tours to anybody that wants one. We've said in a couple hours notice we can get you a tour. We've had several prospective families take tours and then choose their school district, which has been really, really neat. And I want to thank our communications directors who went above and beyond. Some of our tag teachers, talented gifted teachers went above and beyond in doing this. They actually got training at the University of Northern Iowa from some of their student ambassadors on how to do this work. So I've been really proud of that. Again, invite anybody in the community here want to take a tour of one of our campuses. Shoot us an email, give us a call. We'll set that tour up. And so I think there might even be cookies involved, I've heard. So again, aligned with our core value of being invitational, because we want to make sure everybody's invited to where we're at. And in facilities, there is a new beautiful orange gate at Washington. I really thank L&J's that help us with that. I know we had some cones and caution tape and a stop sign, and it was a little unsightly, but L&J's, and I talked to Chris today with them, just thank them. Gate's great because it's allowing us to better direct traffic and traffic flow at Washington, which has made it much safer. And then soon we'll get you guys at our, hopefully in the next 3 or 4 board meetings, to Lincoln to see the beautification things they're doing. They've been working very hard to do some internal things for beautification. We're really proud of that. It goes with our signage work and just making our campuses more invitational. So that's what's going on in the district.
Excellent. Any additional comments by board members?
Just winter sports has started. I encourage everyone to get out and support the Comets with all of the activities going on over the next few months.
Seeing no other comments, agenda item number 6 is committee reports. I do not believe we have any committee reports this month. We are quite busy between convention and Thanksgiving. Probably won't have any for next month, I'm assuming.
Jason's not here, but I'll pipe in with facilities. We did
Oh, you did
schedule a
meet?
meeting. No, we've scheduled a
Scheduled.
meeting for December 12th. So we will have, not for the next board meeting, because that'll be on the 10th, but we'll have a report back
We'll look
in
forward to the report
January.
in January then. Agenda item number 7, Facilities Assessment Report. In September of 2018, the district engaged Estes Construction to complete a facility assessment. They are here to share that information, those findings. This is a information discussion exhibit item. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to take this off the rack.
Please.
If it's okay, because there's a few exciting things in here, actually a lot of exciting things in this 160-page document that you received by email. However, so you don't have to print it. We did bring copies for you tonight, so
That would be excellent, because I
we'll be-
believe there was some difficulty in emailing it.
Yes, there was. Yes, there was. And keep in mind, this is the final report as we've taken the comments that we received and incorporated into the document itself. So for the benefit of the new board members and certainly for Mike, what we'd like to do tonight is really kind of talk about how to read the document and some of the things that you'll find in there. The reason that's important is because we know that it is not a 1 or 2 day process to go through this document, considering the amount of information that's in here. So our goal is to give some orientation on how to read the document and come back within a couple of weeks and maybe to one of your board work sessions, answer some questions for you, and really start talking about how we move forward or how we can help you advance the decision-making process by way of the things that inspire your culture and climate related to facilities. One of the things that I have to commend you on is that you are already being looked at as an exemplar school district with what you've done at your middle school. And we're very proud to say that we at Estes Construction are also very proud of the facility. And we take every opportunity to direct other school districts to come and look at it. So later on in the PowerPoint, you'll see a picture of one of those visits and hopefully be able to reflect on what that means to us and also to you. One of the things that Estes Construction is very heavily involved with is the Iowa Association of School Boards. The ICAT program, Iowa Construction Advocacy Team, is a partnership that we have with ISB. And that program is intended to be the source for Iowa school districts as it relates to facilities. Our goal is to make the inquiries related to facilities very simple to navigate. And that's why we're the only construction manager endorsed by ISB and have been so ever since 2009. So that's a little bit of background on the ICAT program. The other thing I wanted to talk about is because of our prior engagement with you, starting, well, I think the very first assessment we did for you was in 2012. So I believe our visits with you were even prior to that. And we value that because we feel that we understand where you want to go as a school district, where you've been, how things have progressed, and certainly we want to be part of how you move forward with that. Because we feel like we know that future-ready learning environments are a key to your culture and your climate. So in that process, what we've done is we've listened to you. We've talked about existing facility conditions, not just at the previous middle school, but certainly the high school. And in this assessment, in this report, we also looked at Lincoln and Washington. In fact, we took the opportunity while we were here to also look at your original maintenance building and the stadium and the pool at the original middle school. So you might see some information in the document related to that. So determining what next steps is part of what we'll be assisting you with. In the assessment itself, the items that we assessed have a cost associated with them. What the cost includes is what design and construction management fees could look like for something like that. They also include some contingency because we don't know technically how everything is going together just yet. That's where the design and engineering comes in, and we'll be on board for that process. As you know, throughout the middle school project, in design, we continued to update your budget so that you knew every step of the way where your budget sat. And were no surprises on bid day. I remember several of you were at the bid opening, and it was a very fruitful one. I think we were 50,000 under budget. So that was very good. What is not included in the assessment items are property acquisition. Whatever cost is associated with that, we clearly don't understand what that looks like yet because there's not enough information. We also don't have legal fees in there in case there is some sort of property acquisition that requires legal interpretation and what that means. The other thing that is not in those costs is escalation and inflation. As you know, the only thing that's constant right now is that the cost of things continues to go up, and that construction material is no exception. Labor cost is no exception to that. So we want to just make sure that we understand that the document and the costs that are in the document are not projected costs to be long-term items. Now, in the prioritization exercise, we certainly can look at what that means if you're talking about a 5-year, 10-year plan, but we're looking at this within a 1 to 1.5 year implementation, if you will, on some of the improvements. So, for orientation, we looked at the different facilities, as I mentioned, Washington, the former middle school, Lincoln, the original maintenance building, the high school, and the new middle school as well. An example of the information you'll find in the document is here, for example, Lincoln Elementary. We like to give some context in terms of when the building was originally built. This building was built in 1914 originally, and has had about 5 additions done to it. So that gives you some context as to the last addition being 2000. So when we start talking mechanical systems, for example, a well-maintained mechanical system in an institutional use like this has a lifespan of about 20 years. 25 years is kind of a stretch there. But at 20, we start seeing some maintenance things that are necessary. No surprise here. And you'll find some of that detail in the assessment book. The other thing that I'd like to point out is that currently, if we got the enrollment number approximately correct, we've got about 331 students there. The square footage of the building tells us that you're currently at 161 square feet per student. The regional average is about 240 square feet per student. And I say region because we look at Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas. That's the Region 8, as it's called, by the construction, the 20th edition construction school planning and management issue. So what that tells us is you might be short on square footage. However, we don't jump to conclusions because if your operation is good and your instruction is working, then you don't need to make any changes here. Where we get alarmed is if the inverse was the case, where you've got 300 square feet per student. Then that tells us that you have excess square footage to some degree. But you don't have that here, so we won't get alarmed. This is an example of one of the 4 things that we look at in compiling the assessment. Health, life, safety is one of them. Building improvements is the second one. Site improvements is the third one. And then, of course, we always talk about new facilities and what that means. In this case, I want to point out that at Lincoln, you still have some asbestos-containing material, thus the big caution warning on this door here. And that's likely in the steam tunnels, the piping that serves the original mechanical system. There's another section that I'm going to have Sherry speak to. And despite the fact that we kind of dressed alike, that this was totally coincidence. So, this here is an example of building improvements.
Like Pete said, one of the areas that we reviewed when we did the site visit was building improvements, which included some like flooring, acoustical ceilings. This example is existing flooring that has reached the end of useful life. And then we show an example of what new flooring could look like, and then we give you a cost range based on depending on what materials are chosen. It could be a lower end or a higher end material.
Thank you. So one of the things that I didn't dive into just yet, but is important to point out is, at this time, we're so high level that we don't know if the replacement flooring material is going to be vinyl composition tile, like what you have, or if you're going to go with something different, which is similar to what's on the lower picture, which is, I believe that's a marmoleum type of a tile, which is a higher cost per square foot. So what we like to do is give you a cost range, a low and a high, knowing that based on our experience on similar facilities, you could be in that range. The reason we share that with you, it's important for future planning. What does your facility improvement budget look like for next year and the year after that? So that's where this becomes relevant. The other part that I wanted to share with you regarding Washington, for example, again, here you're serving about 368 students. Your current square foot per student is about 163, which again is not out of line based on what you have at Lincoln. Okay, but what we do know here is that this was built in 1970 and has had one addition 1980. So if you look at that in the context of the lifespan of the systems, we know that this facility will also need some mechanical improvements as the building continues to age. One example of the health, life, and safety category is, for example, the upper picture is kind of hard to see here, but that's your front door. If you look at that building, your office area is removed from the main entry. And one of the things that's concerning in this day and age is that someone could come in with what we call uncontrolled access. So how do we prevent that? Or how do we make sure that we are greeting the visitors as they approach the front door, that we see who's coming? Well, our solution here is to recommend some sort of a renovation that puts the admin office close to that main entry, thereby creating a secure vestibule so that people that are approaching, be it a visitor, a parent, or someone coming in to see the principal, has to be greeted by one of the administrators in that office before they're allowed to enter further into the building. Now keep in mind, all of the things that we'll share with you tonight and that are in the document are for information only. There's very few items that we found that we could consider urgent, as in we need to make this fixed within 1 year. And I'll show you a pie chart a little bit later on how that breaks out. But keep in mind, you don't have to do every single one of these things. We are not the fire marshal. We're not the authority having jurisdiction, but we are who you hired to inform you on the condition of your existing facilities and what possible solutions we could come up with for that. This is another one where Sherry did quite a bit of work on you want to talk about the hard surface play area? Sure.
Again, another area that we reviewed was site improvements, which this is an example. This slide is an example of this. This is at Washington. You've got a couple large asphalt hard play surfaces. The top picture shows one of the existing conditions where it's cracking, it's becoming uneven. It's could result in a possible safety hazard. The bottom picture is just an example of what a new playground could look like. In our cost, we've also included the addition of 2 basketball hoops. And that's just, again, the example is just with some striping and some additional hoops. And the bottom, again, is the cost range of possibly the high and low range.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to the middle school. the new middle school, if you will. On this one, some general information here is when we ran the square footage and the students that you're serving there, we're coming up with about 243 square feet per student, where the regional average is about 183. And having been involved in that project, I know for a fact that your gymnasium is sized for high school competition. So what we know is that we're not alarmed by those numbers either, and here's why. That facility will be used in conjunction with high school activities. So that's why those numbers make sense to us. One of the things that we heard during our visit, and by the way, Jerry Mitchell and Mike and Justin and others were very instrumental in walking us through the different facilities. But one of the things that we did hear at the middle school is that perhaps we should consider raising the height of some of the guardrails. So the assessment item that you see here is categorized as a building improvement, and raising the height of the guardrails, they are to code currently. The issue is not that. The issue is, could they go higher, in this case, where you've got seating backed up to those guardrails. That clearly elevates the surface that students are on. And the answer is yes, there is a way to do that. And some of the detail in the report will enumerate that. As we get into the high school, for example, this one we looked at in 2017. If you remember, we did the assessment then of the facility, and it's no surprise that this building clearly has the most need, as evidenced by a slide that I'll show you here shortly. But here, again, the number of students that you're serving versus your square footage is about, currently you're at 252, where the regional average is 191. There's a lot of areas where that could be improved, primarily in the configuration of the, I always get lost in like 500 circle. Is that the big one? Because I find myself just going in circles. So, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better with that. So circulation is a big contributor to the square footage there. Keep that in mind as you move forward. Not only circulation, but your accessibility. We know that to get to some of the locker rooms and certainly up to the mezzanine and the stage, you have a need for accessibility. That doesn't just extend to the different levels. It's also, Americans with Disabilities Act also applies to your restroom facilities, stairs, need for elevators, lifts, and different things like that. So those bits of information are also in the report. Another area as a building improvement is we know that there's a re-roofing need, specifically in maybe the science wing, some of the vocational area, and there's a small roof that I believe goes or covers part of your mechanical room. Keep in mind that that mechanical room serves the rest of the building as you go to the north. So there's a lot of utilities that are going through the bottom of that big circle there. So your improvements in the future will have to take that into account. This is a site improvement. We heard that mowing along one of the major thoroughfares there, if the picture doesn't do it justice, you actually have to go out there and look at the very steep bank that's there. And one of our solutions is to think about a retaining wall that will help alleviate that steep slope and would help your facility staff in keeping that mowed and done safely. So the swimming pool at the original middle school, we looked at that and we were curious by what it would take to bring that back. So one of the things to consider is that that pool has been empty for several years, and when we looked at the equipment in the basement, there's no salvaging that. In fact, part of the assessment team was a mechanical and electrical engineer from an engineering consulting firm that we use. So they gave us their input, but we also reached out to a pool company, maintenance and improvement company that actually has history with this specific pool. I believe the name of the firm is ACO. And during the time that we inquired about this with them, they actually were going to have someone in the area, and I don't know if they actually stopped in to talk to Jerry about it, but they gave us some insight on what it would take to bring this back. Unfortunately, the cost of doing that is not in your favor, because what we're looking at is between $2 to $2.5 million to bring this pool back into operation. Keep in mind, that's also recertifying it as well. And then the original maintenance building. There was just a lot of things that we looked at there. The biggest surprise, because we started before, well, very early one morning, and we could actually see daylight inside the building through the roof. So that gives you some context as to the condition of the facility. You'll find several other items from that building in the report, and we believe that perhaps the time to repurpose that site might be in the future. These are the pie charts that I mentioned. The one on the far left is average cost by facility. The orange is the high school. You can see in comparison to the other facilities, that one is the one that has the most need. Average cost by category is what we call the health, life, safety, building improvements, site improvements, and then in your case, we didn't really get into the new facilities aspect of it, but you'll notice that the building improvements category by far outweighs the other two. Average cost by priority on the far right. You had very few items that we consider urgent. The urgent items consist of backflow preventers that need to be added, which your own staff could do. I certainly don't want to add any more burden to Jerry and the group, but it's something that could be done internally, and we felt that you should be aware that that is an urgent item, because what you don't want to do is continue to operate the way you are now. The biggest chunk there in the red is what we call required, and required is 1 to 5 years. Let's remediate those things within 1 to 5 years, if possible. The recommended is the green, which is 5 to 10 years. And then the suggested is probably the smallest sliver there. When we mean suggested, we're talking about 10 years and out. But those things are good to know as you plan your improvements, because if you're going to do a lighting replacement, maybe it makes sense to replace the ceiling as well. You've already got some of the same people on site. That could be the time. So let's look at the cost ranges. This is an example of the assessment summary that you'll find in the report. This is Lincoln. You'll notice health, life, safety, building improvements, and site improvements. We won't run through each and every one of these lines, but I will share with you that we've got a low and a high cost for each item. And this is basically the summary of the detailed pictures and things that we were showing you earlier. And then we've also got a priority. This was our interpretation of the condition of your facilities, with B being the required, C being the recommended, and you see D down here towards the bottom of the page, new playground equipment, as an example. So let's look at the high school. Can everybody see that? It's not intended for us to read entirely, but it is intended to give you some context related to the high school. And right now we're talking about between 14.4 and 21.4 million for high school improvements. And how that breaks out by facility is on this page. So if you look at total cost by facility, the top third of the page, it gives you each building or each site and then the cost range. Total cost by category, let's say I'm only interested in the health, life, safety stuff. Just the code stuff is all I want to know about. We give you that high, that low and that high. Or if you're interested in only the urgent stuff, that's what the lower third of the page is, between $25,000 and $43,000. Now clearly that's more than backflow preventers, but you've got several structures there to take into account. You can see the total of all the facilities and the assessment items are between 24 million and 36 million. Now, you may ask yourself, well, we don't have that kind of money laying around Terry, what do we do? So one of the things that we've learned over the years is to really kind of talk about multiple funding mechanisms that you're very familiar with. SAVE, your sales tax. The SAVE extension, we're looking forward to seeing that take place here in early 2019. We are working with our legislators that we know that can influence that, because we know how important it is for school districts like yourself and others that have a need. PEPL, we know that the PEPL is very instrumental in helping pay for some of these things. We also know that the two types, the board approved and the voter approved PEPL, and I don't remember exactly where you are with each, the range in those, but then you've certainly got the referendum or the bonds, selling bonds, a referendum process as a third mechanism. And then the last one that we always like to make sure that we talk about are any cash reserves, anything that you've got from accumulated SAVE or PEPL, grants that you may have acquired over the years, and then certainly donations, which we know based on the middle school that you've got a very supportive community, as evidenced by the athletic equipment in your gymnasium and other areas. So what happens next? Well, you review the assessment information. You decide on what priorities you want to move forward with, and we can help you with that. And then we start to form or talk about how do we get that budgeted. And if you're working with the folks from Piper Jaffray, they're always very good about running different financial scenarios for you, and certainly different tax implications if it is a referendum or a bond that you choose to go. Then we integrate that information with the design team, whoever that is, to make sure that, as in the middle school, as they're designing, coming up with these great ideas, we are putting costs to those ideas so that we know at all times where your project sits, so that there's no surprises on bid day. That's the design and construction, and then the completion. So a summary of that is this very, it's not a complex chart, but right now I like to show this because we're kind of up in the upper left-hand corner. You've seen this before. So the next thing would be certainly to engage some of those financial projections. What could they look like? And a lot of that depends on what you want your priorities to be, or what they should be. So the assessment, the report, is one of your guides. The financial projections certainly is another one, and we're here to help you marry those so that you can continue your facility improvement program. We're very proud of your facility, as evidenced by our magazine here on the right, Advocates, that we issued to all of our clients and prospective clients and our associates. The lower left-hand side is just being part of one of the exemplar tours that you opened your middle school up to a different school district. I believe that is Hartley Melvin Sanborn, I believe, was the district that day. And certainly on the upper left are our staff, Estes Construction staff, working alongside your students to mock up an instructional area that I believe Mr. Lundberg was very instrumental in facilitating as well. So I've done a lot of talking, but it's my turn to listen. So who has the first question?
I think you answered them all. I had some initially, and you did cover each one as we went along. When Scott and I stepped on the board 6 years ago, there was one of these in place that was considerably thicker than this one. So it's encouraging to see that it's not a 4-inch binder. But we do have a lot of work ahead of us. Thank you very much for the organization, and I know Jerry values the input.
Thank you. Yeah, it's our pleasure.
I had a couple of things.
Yes, sir.
I think your numbers on enrollment at Lincoln that you quoted are a little high, because there's only 2 grade levels there. And you were quoting somewhere around 300 or 300 plus, and there's not that many students in 2 grades at Lincoln.
174 was the last.
Okay, so just for clarification.
Yes.
Your numbers were high, therefore your square footage per student would be off. And also for clarification, you were talking about our square footage at the current high school is high, square footage per student.
Per student.
And we have, what, under 500 students at the high school now?
It's over 500.
Just over 5. Huh?
511.
511. But back in the day, we had 750 students in that building in 3 grades instead of 511 in 4 grades.
Yeah.
So that building is getting to the same point as 500 North Grand got when we had, you know, a lot more students in those buildings 30, God, I'm gonna age myself, 40 years ago, 38 since I graduated, but we had a lot more students in the building because we had more students in general back then. So there's where we have a lot of square feet per student now.
Yes.
But 38 years ago,
It worked.
it worked.
Yes.
Yeah, because we had 750 students in 3 grades instead of 511, again, in 4 grades.
Right.
So we have square footage that's not necessarily being utilized at all or appropriately.
Yes, so I would say, yeah, and that's why I mentioned earlier, if it's working for you, we're not alarmed by that, because we know the age of some of these buildings is such that you've had to continue to operate them despite the decreasing enrollment, because we're seeing that all over the state, with exception of the Metro Des Moines area. It seems like every other or a lot of other school districts have a similar condition as yours, and we know that inefficiency is not your friend. Energy inefficiency, square footage inefficiency, and certainly the age of these buildings tell us that if you are not seeing those major mechanical impacts yet, which would surprise me if you haven't, you will very soon, because of the age of the infrastructure that's there. So.
When some of those mechanical infrastructures that you've mentioned have been on the radar of buildings and grounds for a number of years. Robin, you were on buildings and grounds. The heat exchange air conditioners in the 1970 edition at the high school are way beyond their life expectancy, and we just, the cost to replace them is very high.
It's an investment, absolutely.
And it just hasn't happened yet.
Correct, yeah, it's an investment, absolutely. Well, we're here to help you through that. We're here to help you prioritize, and we know that you've got limited resources and you're making do with what you have. But we believe that because of the position we have in the education market, the education space as we call it, we're seeing best practices all over the state and surrounding states. So when we're at the table early, we can help ask the hard questions of those that are coming up with all these great ideas, and then put pencil to paper related to costs, because we know those are the bookends we have to work within. So,
thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Well, in my excitement, I failed to introduce my teammates. So I'm Pete Perez, Sherry Turkle, who was part of the assessment team, and certainly Mike Carroll, who was one of my colleagues also serving the education market. And we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you very much, Pete. Agenda item number 8, the German trip. Sherry Stroll, high school German teacher, will present her plan for the summer of 2019 German exchange trip. You've seen in your packet there is some information there, along with the fundraising information.
So I'm Sherry Stahl, and I really just want to ask if you guys have any questions about the plan, but the plan would be to go this summer, leaving on May 25th, headed to Curtin, where that was where our partner school was here in October. That's where they're from. We would stay with them. We would arrive on the 26th. We would stay with them until June 7th. In the morning of June 7th, we would take either the bus or the train. I'm still getting quotes for the transportation, so it fits our students' needs the best way. We would take the train or bus to Munich, Germany, which is down south, where we would stay as a group in a hostel. We would do some sightseeing. The kids would get the opportunity to spend a day in Salzburg, which is in Austria, where they would get to hear the different dialects and see different German culture than just Germany. And I feel like that trip really gives the students a chance to see different parts of Germany, because every part of Germany is different. The dialects are different, and it just gives them different culture and landscapes to be able to see. We would leave on the 11th to head back up to Berlin, where we would fly out of on the 12th. And so it would be 2.5 weeks. We have 16 students that are signed up, ready to go. 2 teachers, myself and Mrs. Mead, who is the FCS teacher at the high school, is agreeing to go with us, as St. Ansgar had no students that wanted to take this opportunity.
That number is very good.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Right now, the price range is between $1,600 and $2,000. Obviously, there's some ends that we're trying to meet and figure out. I'm also really wanting the students to be part of this planning. So they've come up with fundraiser ideas. So the fundraiser ideas that you have are student ideas. Also, we want to do planning meetings with them to plan the time that we have in Munich. There's also some time in Berlin on the 11th, as well as another day trip to Berlin while we're in Köthen with our host families. I think that's all the information I have, unless you guys have questions.
What are numbers that we've had in the past for this trip? I mean, is that pretty close to?
From what I've heard, it's been about 8 or lower. I will say this year, because of the timing, I checked into big travel companies like Maryland used in the past, and I had used at my old school. One, they wouldn't take us because it was past their enrollment date, and most of them that wanted us were $5,000. So we are working with R&R Travel, which has quoted us $900 for flight and $133 for the travel insurance. And I think that, and then with me planning the rest of the trip, that has really been able to bring the cost down, which was eye-opening because I've always used a company and I was just blown away with all the extra fees that they charge. And I feel like, why not give the students opportunity? So I think the numbers are because of the cost. I think our families are able to afford it. I think it's, normally I would like more time for fundraising, but I think it's doable within the time we have.
It's exciting to see the numbers up, because then that just automatically gives us more host families for the exchange. Because at one time, those numbers were in the 20s, and then it did dwindle down to just a very few handful, 6 and 8 few years.
And I want to publicly thank Sherry. She has done a rock star job at planning and doing the extra work. You see this low price quote, and I've done enough trips myself with being a band director that it is very expensive to use a company, but they take a lot of work off the instructor. And this awesome teacher has went above and beyond to make this trip more accessible to all kids, and which really goes in our core value. And that's not just happening through magic; it's happening through a lot of phone calls, a lot of work that she's doing. And so, thank you, Sherry, for doing that. And sorry, the mic's
I think I'm
levitating on you. So.
It's mine in its own. Yeah, thank you for that, because I'm sure there's students that would not have been able to go if you hadn't done that extra work. This is an action item.
Move to approve the summer of 2019 German exchange trip plans as presented.
I'll second. I have a motion and a second to approve the summer of 2019 German exchange trip plans as presented. Any additional comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Agenda item 9, the AEA presentation. I'll turn this over to Superintendent Fisher.
I'd like to introduce Dr. Deb Rich, who's part of the AEA board for Central Rivers, and she's here with Jody Albertson, our regional administrator.
Hi, glad to be here with you. I serve as your liaison to the AEA board. I represent a number of districts up and down the Cedar River. So except for Dike, New Hartford, then we skip over Cedar Falls, Janesville, all the way to Charles City, and then back around to Tripola, Wapsie Valley. I actually live in the Wapsie Valley School District, and I serve as president of the AEA board. So I'm happy to be here tonight. And with me is Jody Albertson. We're going to kind of tag team this a little bit. But first, I'd like to draw your attention to the bifold brochure that you have. Hearing that you have a lot of decisions to make regarding expenditures, I'm hoping to show a way that you can save some money, and that's by utilizing the services of the AEA. If you turn to the inside, in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see student and fiscal recap. Your district is approximately 2.41% of the AEA enrollment. So if we look at the number of students, and so we've allocated that. I mean, you get to use as much of it as you want to, but if we were to say how much of that are you entitled to, it's over $29 million of AEA money that is allocated towards services for your district. And so I'm kind of thinking about if we look at 2.41 as being, or 2.42 as being maybe the targeted use, are you getting the value that you could be? And so if we look at media and technology, all of those numbers fall below that. And so I'm asking you, if you want to use more services, please feel free to do so. Not only are there the online searches, professional books, the lending library, but also access to print services, brochures, posters, calendars, all of those kinds of things that many districts utilize through the print services. Anything you want to add to that?
One thing that I wanted to add is that technology changes so fast, and we're always adding new resources. And so I was thinking that it might be a good idea down the road to have some of our media tech or info tech people come in and share with your teachers again what those resources are, so that we can hopefully up that usage of ebooks. We've got some, like a resource called Mac and Via that is an online book service, and students can have usernames and passwords and get access to a lot of different books, and just access that right online from school or from their homes or anything. The other thing that I brought and that I've sprinkled around the floor now is just some examples of work that our print shop does. So our print shop does a lot more than just copies, obviously, and so we do posters and flyers and programs and brochures and all kinds of things. So I do have just a little handful of those that I can send down, and you guys can take a look at if you'd like.
Moving on down the page, you can see school management services. We offer computer repair. You do take advantage of Medicaid reimbursement, and the same with child find services on the lower left-hand side. And then another area of the AEA are those professional learning and curriculum instruction usage. There's a strong use of professional development courses, and we applaud you for taking advantage of that, as well as professional development participation. You can see that the district is involved in a number of the services, although not all of them, and we just want to share a little bit more information in case that might be something you want to look into in the future.
I could talk about authentic intellectual work first. That's an initiative that's actually a state of Iowa initiative, and the purpose of that is to help students. It provides a framework for teaching and learning to help students do more authentic learning that's related and relevant to the real world, and gets them into, as it talks about intellectual work, more cognitively rigorous work where they're thinking and problem solving rather than just memorizing and regurgitating. One thing that is similar to authentic intellectual work that's not in this brochure is an initiative that we're just starting called Deep Learning, and that does similar work related to authentic learning. And we have an opportunity right now at our agency to be part of the Deep Learning Global Network with Michael Fullen, who's a big name in education. And you did send a number of teachers to an informational day from there were high school, middle school, and elementary from all levels. And so we'll be talking more about that and seeing if that's something Charles City was to take advantage of. I will also talk about the TLN, that's the Teacher Leadership Network. And what I want to let you know there is that no that says you're not participating in that is a little bit misleading. So we offer a teacher leadership network that meets a few times a year. I think it's 3 times a year right now. And your teachers don't attend that because they network within your conference. So there's a network of teacher leadership people within your conference. However, they are heavily involved in a number of the other supports that we have for teacher leadership. They've been part of some reflective learning opportunities with Pete Hall this year. They've been part of, in the past, our work with Diane Sweeney on student-centered coaching. They participate in our coaching labs, and so even though they don't go to this network, they're really involved in the other supports that we have. Did you want to?
Sure. I happen to know quite a bit about reading recovery, so I thought I'd share that. In case you have any students in first grade who are struggling readers, and we're talking the lowest 20% of the class, it is available to have a teacher trained in reading recovery. They would be serving at the primary building, who would be working one-on-one to bring students up to grade level. Statewide, reading recovery served over a little over 2,300 kids in Iowa, and over 75% of those kids reached grade level reading within 12 to 20 weeks. And so it's a short-term intervention. It's to get accelerated progress, and once the children are on grade level, then they can profit from classroom instruction and move on and be fine without additional intervention. So just want to let you know that the AEA does provide a teacher leader who could train a teacher to do this, and it would be a way to help bring up that lower. It kind of raises all boats, because once you raise the achievement level of the first grade students, then they can progress, and it minimizes the number of students who would need long-term intervention. So just want to make you aware of that as well. Then we also have the crisis response team, which, do you want to address that?
Sure. The crisis response team is a team that we have available to come in and help districts out when you've had a crisis. So a student death or a teacher death. And while nobody wants to think about that happening here, it is really nice to know that you have support ready to go. So we've got a team of people who have been trained in a crisis response model, and they come into your district and help you navigate that, because it's something that districts don't often have to go through, and leaders can be overwhelmed or don't know the steps, and we've got people who are experienced in doing that. So even though that's an awful service to have to use, schools and administrators really appreciate it when the time does come that they do that. One other thing that I wanted to mention, Deborah mentioned Child Find Services. I also wanted to highlight some of our other special education services that we provide. We provide in your buildings team representative services. Those are school psychologists, school social workers, or special education consultants, and they do these Child Find. They do their evaluations and reevaluations, and they support special education teachers and general education teachers in making sure those students get what they need. We've also got some other specialists, special education specialists, who help out with that too. So we have occupational therapists and physical therapists and speech language pathologists and early childhood consultants. So we have a lot of people power in that area to support students with disabilities.
Thanks. And a lot of expertise that would be very expensive for a school district to hire on their own. The second page is a one-pager, and this is from the AEA Purchasing Profile of Savings. This has a statewide consortium that is saving districts thousands and thousands of dollars. You can see the categories in which Charles City participates with health, library, office and classroom, and technology. The other areas you may want to consider in the future. What you notice is in the purchase column is how much you've spent in this category for this last year, for 2017-18 school year. The savings is above and beyond the educator price. So if you were just to go out and bid this, the consortium can get you additional savings beyond what the educator price would be. Now, on top of that, I happen to be on the state board for this as well. Well, it was the day before the school board convention. We had a state board meeting, and we voted to give back another, well over $200,000 back to school districts above and beyond this savings. We don't keep any profit, so to speak. We vote to send it back. And so that's prorated according to districts. So in addition to this amount, you'll be receiving additional funds as a reimbursement to you. But note that it's kind of one of those things with the more you invest in a consortium buying, the more you get back. So you might want to do some comparison shopping just to see if the services that you're paying for are getting you the best deal. If so, continue on. But otherwise, you might want to check out some of the services through AEA Purchasing, because the bulk of purchasing of all the districts across the state really does get some good benefits for you. So, any questions about any of the information? All right.
How would our purchasing compare to our peer institutions in the region?
For this? Well, I had another one of these meetings a couple weeks ago, and they it's a comparable size district, and they had purchased about $250,000 through this and had, comparable. The savings then was percentage of that, so.
You also mentioned when you began is that you have a service you can provide, I believe you called them technology educators in some aspect, that they would come and they could help assess things in the classroom. Is there a cost for that service? Is that something that's...
All of the AEA services are free.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Just give a call. We're here to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agenda item 10, ISAB convention. Time for us to share our experience. Who would like to start?
Well, I thought the convention was great. There were some really good sessions. I think my favorite was listening to Kevin Honeycutt speaking, and then we went to his breakout session in the afternoon. I just thought he was very passionate about helping students, all students. And I also really enjoyed the colors for school boards, which I think most of us went to. I think that type of activity would be really helpful to bring into the district and have staff go through that, and to help everybody communicate a little bit better, understand different personalities and how to work together. And I thought it was very good information. So
I agree. After we did the colors, and then you look back, once we talked about what color, because I also took the colors, and once we talked about that, and you look at the description of how those people like to be communicated with, and how it's like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, sure, yeah, that's right. And so that was very helpful, and I could see where that is almost a necessity in a group such as ours that has to work together, and I'm sure in any setting in an office or with our teachers and support staff. Also participated in the delegate assembly. Went pretty much as expected. There was some debate over some items, but items that were presented initially were, our priorities are as such, nothing much changed there. Also had the opportunity to attend some vocational programs that talked about adding vocational and how to add vocational. That's what I found most interesting, was able to go to a session late Thursday afternoon that talked about what are the obstacles, and districts were able to just have like a big round table and talk about this was our obstacle, and another district would say, well, this is how we overcame that obstacle with vocational training. A lot of it had to do with teaching, with the teachers finding those there. And then I was fortunate enough to spend another night, got to go to the president's meeting on Friday. And as Superintendent Fisher had mentioned about the boards that go and the boards that don't go, I sat next to a board vice president whose board president had never came to a convention, and her questions were many, and her knowledge was shallow. She had lots that she wanted to know because she just became board president, and it was at that moment that I realized that the time and effort that we put into all this really does pay off. And I think our district is benefiting from the extra time that we put in all this extra training. Scott?
Went to Finance 201 and have lots of information I'll give to Terry or scan and send out specific to our district. Went to a seminar on, I'm not going to get the name of it correct, something about how to keep things confidential when you're dealing with public meetings. They talked about incidences that involve students and then having disciplinary hearings and how to separate and maintain the confidentiality. The one specific that they talked about was there was a school district down by Iowa City that had a football player that took a knee at a football game during the national anthem a year or two ago, and then there were racial and derogatory slurs that spread like wildfire through Snapchat. And the player who took a knee, there was nothing that the district can do because that's already defined by other state laws and or rulings, but the racial slurs and the derogatory comments that spread like wildfire through Snapchat, that violated bullying policies. So that student ended up being disciplined. And the controversy in a public that comes with those types of things and what that district did to deal with it, are a lot of the same types of things we've had over the years when something is known publicly, but we can't say anything publicly because it deals with student issues. So that was a very good session to go back. And listening to their district and their attorneys go through things, I believe that, the things we've dealt with in the past and how we've dealt with them are right on target with all of the other recommendations and the way that district with high profile issues, how they've dealt with them. So I felt comfortable after listening to them talk that we were on the right page with how we've been dealing with things.
Good. Very good. Josh?
I had an opportunity to go to some of the same ones that Missy went to. The colors one I thought was really interesting. If you've ever taken the Myers-Briggs, it's a very deep and long, thoughtful process, and you have to go through if you're a TGMP or an FA, COA, or whatever they are. This one was much more direct and I think easier to understand. It made it real clear to help you understand how different personalities will interact with each other. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed the speaker who did it. He actually is from Council Bluffs, and I believe he works for the AEA over there. Did an outstanding job. And I also really enjoyed Kevin Honeycutt. I got a lot of really good information from him. He has a website where he puts a lot of these things that he finds up for anybody to see and shares them. And he sent that link out, and he promised if you emailed him, he would email you back. I did not email him, but I thought he was a great motivational person and helped us realize that you're only limited by kind of what you think. He had a really unique saying that he was talking with somebody, I think they were from China maybe, and they said, he said, "Oh, you're American. You only know what you cannot achieve once somebody tells you it." So, it was that we just keep going until somebody tells us that we can't do it because we just go. I thought that was really good. And motivation I thought was great. I had an opportunity to see some of the other districts around us, specifically Osage. They have some really interesting things going on. They've done some really innovative technology stuff, which is kind of passionate for me since I work in the field. I met their superintendent, Barb, and she's very passionate about, they have a coding program that they've started, and they also, they received a grant. I think they're in their second year of it. Really, really interesting to learn how that project had kind of blossomed and was working. And it kind of aligned with some of the Iowa Big North stuff that we've talked about, because they are working with business and industry to help them align with a career path that maybe is not, a typical all the way through college. It would give somebody some work experience and some understanding. So I thought that was really good. So I had a really enjoyable time and learned a lot of really good information. So it was great.
Thank you. That's good. Superintendent Fisher?
I attended most of the things that you described. I missed the one Scott had went confidentiality, but I talked to you enough at breaks. I go, I better get to that one. So it was fun. You guys previewed it for me, but I really also enjoyed the generational expert that came in and talked about the difference in Generation X versus millennials, and really focused on that as we are in the crux of the millennial being probably the biggest population of our workforce, and how that affects us in human capital and hiring, how it affects us working with parents, how it impacts us, Generation Z coming up with our kids. So learned a lot of really fascinating things. I think that'll inform our practice moving forward. But I agree too, and I've heard this echoed, looking at some strengths-based assessments for our kids and staff, I think could be a huge step in helping us better serve. And that goes right into the trauma-informed instruction that we're doing. So looking forward to taking some of the stuff we learned and implementing it.
I would also echo the generational one that kind of kicked it off. He brought some things to mind that I never really thought about. He did a really nice job of kind of talking about the different generations, and we spent a lot of time talking about kind of Generation X and the baby boomers more than the millennials, because he kind of talked about how the integration between those seems to be the most challenging, and what some perspectives that people maybe don't think about, and how you could maybe interact with them a little bit better. I thought he was really good too. That's a great point, Mike. Thank you.
We did have excellent keynote speakers. I stayed for the final session too, and that key speaker talked about technology and looking into the future, and looking into the past and what the future, and that was interesting to see what his predictions are and what the trends are. I remember just a few years ago, the Google Glasses. There was actually somebody that was a presenter who was saying those were going to be the thing. And this presenter had a list of things that were done for technology, and the facts was out on there. Every single one he presented, the facts was there. But Google Glasses were there too, because nobody bought into them. He says it's not a matter of what technology we present, it's whether or not the public buys into it and takes it and uses it. It may be the most helpful thing there is, but if nobody uses it, it goes the Google Glass way. So that was very interesting too. I want to say thank you to the district and to the community for letting us go. It is, like I said, something that not all boards either have a chance to partake in or decided to partake in, and we're very fortunate that we do get to go, and it is a great learning experience, and I hope that's evident in how well we work together and the things that we accomplish here in this district as a board. Agenda item 11, Superintendent Goals Progress Report.
I'll put my computer up to display out. So I'll try to take some time each quarter to update the board on where we are in terms of the board and superintendent goals. And so being the end of the first quarter, wanted to give you a few updates, and I know you have the exhibit as well, but we'll wait for the, as it boots up here. But the document you have here is actually just our goal sheet that we had approved earlier that I added in under the success criteria, the update on progress. The first goal being professional learning. And you can see the goal and the success criteria and the letters. And the update on progress is below. And, a big part of my job this year is to learn the job, obviously being a new superintendent. And I really appreciate all the work you've worked with me, learning the board aspect as well, which has been really wonderful. But first of all, one of them was meeting regularly with superintendent mentors. I have an official mentor through School Administrators of Iowa, Ed Clamford from Waverly Shell Rock. We literally talk weekly by phone and text, and we go and visit each other once a month. You can also see that I had to count them up, but I documented 11 different superintendents I've met with, either by phone, in person, and corresponded with, and each in a different expertise area. One was, had expertise in boards, one in finance, different things, but that's been growing my professional network. And I really, Harry Heckenthal and I have become really good friends. It started with Mary Jane, but Mary Jane Venz, retired, and she goes, "You need to call Sean and Harry right away." So Sean Snyder in finance, but also very much with Harry, and he's been great, even strengthening a relationship as a board. And then I also work with a variety of nonprofit mentors. There is an administrative executive pastor at a large church in the area that I regularly coach with monthly. He has a responsibility of evaluating like 10 different pastors, across 6 different multi-site churches. Has a lot of similarities to schools. So it's interesting getting different ideas and aspects from other places. Below that, and I won't read all of them, my stepmom's a major in the Army, and we argue who has more acronyms, and you can see this is us in our full glory. But SAI, School Administrators of Iowa, ISEA, Iowa School, oh my gosh, Iowa State Education Association, ISFLC, Iowa School Finance Leaders Consortium, Iowa Association of School Boards, American Association of School Personnel Administrators, that's a new one. And I want to thank you for giving me the flexibility to getting to the things I need to get to, but also allowing me to pick and choose as well. It's a pretty extensive list. There's also probably about 10 things I didn't go to because I've really tried to balance. I need to be in the district. I need to be with kids, but also have to grow my professional learning. So I've really had to pick and choose very judiciously the ones I think have the most impact for us. I really thank you for supporting me going to Chicago. That was mind-boggling on how much I learned, and so excited. I think Central Services is probably sick of me talking about all the anecdotes. I was just showing Terry a website today. So just so many things that we're looking forward to. And then the internal, external stakeholder visits, just some examples. I love one of the local coffee groups. That's been a lot of fun. I keep finding more. Aroma, Senior Center, Hy-Vee. I think we found one at McDonald's I'm going to try to get up here to the Wagon Wheel at Floyd. We're just trying to find different places where I can interact with some of our stakeholders. I was at the Senior Center last month shooting dice, so that was fun. I just won some Oreos. I'm kidding. If I would have walked out of the Oreos, I don't think I would have gotten it in my life because those Oreos were the big prize that day. I'm doing external stakeholder meetings, usually 2 to 3 per week. I have 2 hours budget each day where I just meet with local people. Internal stakeholders, again, 3 to 4. Usually I do those after school, try to catch people. But again, my goal is to meet with all staff members by the end of the year. Goal of at least 100 external stakeholders by the end of the year, and thus far I've done 105 total meetings as of November 26th. That's inaccurate. I did 2 more today, so it's 107. So I was almost late because I had a great paraeducator meeting before I got up here at around 5. Culture and climate goal, you can see the goals and the success criteria, the update on progress. Implemented a system of team leaders. That's huge. It's in its infancy and it's taken time working with the administration. We're creating a systemic way that we take care of people's emotional and organizational health, and also to distribute leadership and decision making back to the people closest to the kids. It's a very new process, and it's got its growing pains, but we are well on our way to provide professional development. It's been a big focus of our senior leadership team. So you see the distributed leadership, and that falls in that same area. Facilitate training, conversations, improvements in behavior management. That was a big priority. I know we heard from the stakeholders, from the board, from our staff. So Love and Logic, PBIS, which is already implemented, but we're strengthening it, Nurture Heart, and I do a lot of training with our senior leadership on behavior. In fact, I led even a staff training with all of our classified staff last month. Worked with the senior leadership and board to clarify and implement the core values. That was a huge piece for the district, and have aggressively, Isaiah, aggressively communicated core values, right? If you want to get me talking for 20 minutes, let's talk core values. So I think he might be doing that on purpose to me sometimes, but I love it. Working on crafting a human capital strategic plan to optimize all aspects of our hiring and retention of our employees. Everything we do is framed through hiring and keeping our best people. When you got great people, everything else happens by itself. So that is one of my strategic focuses for this district for the next 5 years. And so we're working really hard. We want to find the best people and we want to keep the best people. And we're going to find ways to identify that. This is big as well. This is where I spend most of my time, implementation of coaching of senior leadership members. So directors are receiving one-to-one coachings and monthly professional learning as a group, and principals will receive weekly one-to-one coaching, group professional learning weekly. I spend a lot of time with our directors and our principals. That's where I spend most of my time because they are the leverage in which I work with the rest of the district. So that where you spend your time, communication priorities, and some days I'm sure they love it. Some days I'm sure like, oh man, Mike, just go back to your office. But I want to be in the buildings. I want to be with kids. I want to aggressively coach our leadership to optimize the work that they're doing. I'll scroll that down. And currently working on implementing interest-based bargaining with our union and our association groups. I'm happy to say I know Robin and Josh are going on a retreat with our bargaining group here soon. So we're doing some new innovative things with that as well and to really improve culture and climate. And finally, facilities and infrastructure goal, number 1, completion of the ICAT. That was huge. And really gives Jerry and his team a huge step up, and a lot of that work has been done for them. Now they can pick and choose and prioritize, work with Terry and I to figure out where we need to spend our time and money. We are going into a retreat here soon in the next week or so where we're going to try to dissect it and then make recommendations to the facilities committee, which we'll then bring back to the full board. Work with operation director, leadership, and board to craft a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, facilities-wise. That's huge. We want to be on our toes and on our heels. Operations director, so Jerry's working for more aggressive, proactive, preventive facilities systems. We're finding out ways, instead of us just fixing broken things, let's service stuff before it's broken, and then we'll get more life out of it. So we don't want to be a disposable culture. And not that we are, but I probably just us as a society as a whole move that way, but we want to be things that we have things that are built to last and we maintain them that way. 500 North Grant is currently in process of being repurposed with a private developer. We've been working on that, so we're really proud of that work, and it's moving really quickly. And the district is providing marketing support to the Athletic Complex Fundraising Committee, and they're working hard to meet their goal there. And there's a high school task force. Happy with Brian Jerns leading a group of stakeholders of teachers and staff and students, and even getting some parent involvement there, assessing facility needs at the high school level for the future. So a lot of work going on there. This is just a snapshot of the highlights. I kind of took a breath one night and told my wife, I said, got a lot going on, but I think it's a good thing because it's all good work and things we need to be doing, but just want to give you an update of where we are. Questions you may have?
I just wanted to say thank you. I honestly, looking at this being just a snapshot, I don't know how you do it all.
Well, we have a great team, and
Yes,
they've got my back, so I appreciate the team. Really, really having my back. So I'm not in the office a lot, so thanks to Terry at Central Services and Justin really helping keep everything going. But I appreciate that, Missy.
And it doesn't matter what group of people you're talking to, whether it's parents or just people out in the community, young, old. I hear all good things about what you're bringing to the district, and people are excited about you being here. So I thank you for
Well,
that.
thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I'm glad that we've been welcomed as part of the Charles City family. So thank you for that.
This is a great review. Thank you.
Yep.
Very well written and easy to understand. This is going to make our evaluation much easier come springtime. Thank you.
I just have one question for you, Mike.
Mike here.
On update on progress, letter B, you said you met with 11 superintendents. That's outstanding. Are they all from our region, or are they all over the state?
So what I did was I called Rourke Horn, who's the executive director of school administrators of Iowa, and said, give me the best person in the state in all these different things. And he just started listing them off and emailing them to me. So I just cold called these people. I emailed them, hey, can I call and pick your brain? I'll give you one. Nate Marting, who's the Jessup superintendent, is really good at board and superintendent relations. So he gave me, and this was back in July before when I just taken the job, I said, hey, tell me all the things I need to do to have effective board superintendent relations. And he kind of gave me some tips. He's like, do this and do this and don't do this and don't do this. And then he's kind of one of my pocket resources. I called Audie Maxey, the Ballard superintendent. He took that job like 5-6 years ago, and the first thing he had to do was cut $1 million. You know, so he's really a finance expert. So I really picked his brain. I had breakfast with Darwin Lehman, who's the Forest City superintendent. I actually went to Perkins at like 6 o'clock in the morning in Clear Lake, and we sat for 2 hours. How cool is this? He spent 2 hours of his life with me, a brand new superintendent, and just said, and had a stack of documents this thick of just, hey, here's some things you want to think about. And we talk about everything. And what I love is these guys and gals. There's, you know, Barb Schwalman was one I've really tapped into. All the ones that are neighboring superintendents. I met with Jay Jerns. I've met with all of our neighboring superintendents. Went to Plaza de Mexico with, you know, Keith Turner, and they all give me their cell phones. They call anytime. And so what I've always taken pride on is I am the quickest to acknowledge I am never the smartest guy in the room, but I'll call people smarter than me and just, you know, learn from their experience and then just share that wealth with other people. So, and that list keeps growing. I keep meeting great people at conventions, so.
Well, I think that just says a lot, that you recognize areas that you want to grow or you want to be better at, and you've reached out to people who are an expert or a very highly regarded individual in that field, and that they've met with you and said, you know, we want to help you be successful and we want to give you, you know, the tools or information. So that's awesome. That's really well done. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Agenda item 12, interpreter position pay. This information was on our agenda. There was some information in our packet. This is an action item. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2018-19 interpreter wages at $20 per hour as recommended.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the 2018-19 interpreter wages at $20 per hour as recommended. Is there any other discussion? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Agenda item 13, consideration of consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda items as listed.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items as listed below. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Is there any correspondence? Anybody has? Terry? No. Agenda item 15, important upcoming dates. You'll see they're listed for us there on the agenda. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.